I agree with you, Dana. It has to go back. Our stories have to go back to where everything that affects the way we are today, where all that started. And we're talking about grandparents, great grandparents, which we may not know a whole lot about, but what do we know about our grandparents? What do we know about our early family?
Do you have anything specific in your mind, since we've started kind of having this go around in our brains, that stands out about your first family and what you remember from your grandparents and great grandparents?
From what I remember and what I've been told, I had a very dysfunctional family. I should say my parents came from, or at least my father came from, a very dysfunctional family. My mom was an only child, so her childhood, I think, was pretty normal, at least from what I've always heard from her, but she's not with us anymore. My dad is, but he still doesn't remember a whole lot. But he does remember a whole lot about his father, which is where a lot of the dysfunction and the stories, lots of stories came from. lots of funny stories and lots of terrifying stories.
Yeah. Oh no.
But yeah, what about you? What do you remember?
I remember great grandparents for just a little bit. They were the scary old people when you're little. They look different, they sound different, their houses smell, right?
Yes.
Did a little bit of research. Yeah, my great grandma, I remember she had the good candy at Christmas. I remember that and the fruitcake at her house. And then my great grandfather on my father's side was very German, huge, enormous man, very German, thick accent, came across before the war, so he was here. But was a police officer and was, very strict, very stern, big man that was very ominous to me as a little girl. So I don't remember much about that. But I thought it was interesting that you said your mom had a pretty much normal childhood. And when you think of when you think of what normal is now compared to normal then, we had that conversation the other day. I mean, the roles that family members played within their own family are very different. It's like, I think back on my father. My father worked. That's what he did. And when you think, so he would be 90 this year, so he's that generation. But that was his role. That made him a good father because he provided, right? That was the one thing. They were still more attached to that hunter-gatherer part of being the man, and the women were the nurturers. And I think if he were to do that now, or if there was a dad in the world now that all they did was work, not all they did, I don't mean that, no disrespect, Dad, but that was their role in the family, was to provide. And so the family stuff was not the most important. It wasn't what they did. They would be read the riot act. That would have been a bad parent. And and while I didn't see my dad that much, he was a great father because he fulfilled that role. So it's interesting when you say your mom had a normal childhood. I wonder what that would have been for them. I don't know. I mean, that's, like I said, another generation away. Plus depression, plus world wars, plus things like that. It's a whole different way of being raised and how you feel your place in society. And then you get married, and then that they have kids, and then that had to have played into the way that they raised our grandparents. It had to have.
Yeah, totally. I think where you were raised, like North versus South versus the West of the United States, also has to do with it. Because when I say normal childhood, I'm talking about what we think of as traditional. So that's exactly what my maternal grandparents were like. My grandmother stayed home and ran the household, and my grandfather worked. And my mom was, we always say, oh, Mom, you were spoiled. You were an only child, which she probably wasn't, because no one had money back then. No one had money in the 30s and the 40s, and they definitely did not. And my father met my mom when my maternal grandfather came to work for my paternal grandfather.
Oh, wow.
So he was, my mom's dad was a tenant farmer for my grandfather. And so the two teenagers got together and they ended up getting married, because they lived in what we used to call the tenant house on my family farm. where I grew up.
Yeah.
So what is traditional now?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
I mean, think about that, just the terminology. What is traditional now compared to what was traditional back then? And it all has bearing on what we deal with today. And that's what our conversations have been about the last couple months is
Yeah.
what are we bearing today?
Yeah.
What are we literally putting up with and experiencing today, and how that all, came to fruition, and what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, and
If we
I
have to do
think,
anything.
yeah, I was just sitting here thinking about it. Sorry, not a good listener probably, but my mom's mom, you're so much better at the paternal maternal. My mom's mom, so her father was a physician, so that would have been way back, right? Granny wanted to be a doctor, but was told she couldn't because she was a woman.
Oh,
So
wow.
then they go through the depression. My mom was born after depression, and those kind of things going on. She got married, had my mother, 4 years later, had my uncle Bill, who is the only surviving person of that generation, which is a whole nother conversation of what we do in those situations and what that does to our psyches. But she decided to separate from her husband. This is my grandmother. So my grandmother and my granddad separated because he was off philandering and doing whatever. But they didn't divorce because you didn't get divorced back then. So she raised 2 children by herself. So my mom was born in 35. So can you even imagine? Because he was gone like when she was before high school, I think. So she was a 6th grade teacher, almost all of her, always a teacher, all of her life, raised 2 kids by herself, and, trying to just make it work. I can't even imagine what that was like. So
This is your
she's
grandmother, right?
my grandmother, my mom's mom.
Yeah.
So my mom was a super overachiever, not
Oh,
shocking
yeah.
because her father was gone, right? It's the classic looking for approval, which I did too in my life. Duh, go figure. So she was overachieving. So her little brother, my Uncle Bill, just worshiped her because she was an amazing student and did everything, ran glee clubs, performed, was a musician, did all this kind of stuff. And Uncle Bill was toddling behind, right? And is an amazing person in his own right, but just their relationship was affected by that as well. And it's no wonder then that that's what I did in my life, is I overachieved because the father figures were off working, right? Mom's father figure was gone. My father figure was off working. So I internalized that as well, is you are what you do. And I found out just a couple of weeks ago that my son, who is in his 20s now, saw that in me and felt that that was a negative in our relationship, in our family, because he saw my ambition and my striving to constantly do more negatively affect him as he was being raised. And I think that was one thing that was very, I don't feel like I had a chance to be any other kind of a person because I was, we internalized these needs in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of shocked to find out that what I thought was a positive, and that I was modeling good, ambition and good striving for success and all that kind of stuff, which I thought was only a positive, was a negative for my children. And that was just amazing. But once again, I don't feel like I had a choice. That's how I was raised.
Right. And you did that in a positive way. I mean, your boys don't really, I mean, they didn't see you wishing you didn't have to do that. You did that with joy because that is what you were accomplishing what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So impression is different. Obviously, the impression that you got of what you were doing was different than the impression that your son got while he was growing up. It was that those tasks that you were trying to do, and it took you away from him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty deep, actually.
I mean, but so that goes to say, if we have these generations of things that we're all struggling with as we continue to grow in age. So if you're struggling with your own internal thing from your childhood, and then you have your children and you're trying to raise them, but you still have your inner struggles that you're dealing, can you ever not do this? How do you ever raise is that what life is all about, is finding your own story and trying to, I don't know. It almost, the more we talk about it, the more I feel like we're doomed to constantly be having upsets from the way we're raised. And
But
I don't know.
I have to always stick with my go-to. We do the best with the tools that we have at the time. And my dad, who just turned 94 yesterday, even though he's not a Southerner, he's from Michigan. He thinks he's very wise by saying things in a Southern accent, like grandma. He's always said, times they are a changing. And yeah, because no one's ever going to have a constant.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that's changing around us changes without any consideration to how family dynamics change. And so are we ever going to get that, that perfect parenting? Absolutely not. And I don't think God's ever meant to give us that. That's a gift that we're never going to get. It's just not, because what challenge would there be? If somebody wrote the book about it, everybody would have it, and it doesn't exist. So, but to go back and reflect on it would definitely help future generations. We've got to write that to my 80-year-old self, or to my 20-year-old great granddaughter who doesn't exist yet, kind of thing. Can we do the best by telling them, okay, I did this because, absolutely. So, ask the questions. Ask the questions of your parents and your grandparents. Ask the questions. Hey, why did this happen? Yeah. And it may sound like a silly story, but I'm going to tell a quick story. So there's a joke about how this 20-some woman who just got married, she's got a couple kids, she's young, and at Christmas happens to be at their house, right? And the parents are there, the grandparents are there, there might even be great grandparents there. So the young lady takes the ham, you've probably heard this before, she takes the ham and she cuts the end off and she puts it in the roaster, puts it in the oven. And her 6-year-old says, Mom, why are you cutting the end of the ham off? And she goes, I don't know. My mom always did that. And so she went and asked her mom, why do we cut the end of the ham off? And her mom said, I don't know. My mom always did it. So they went and asked Grandma, and Grandma said, I cut the end of the ham off because my pot wasn't big enough.
But that's it, right?
Yeah. So you never know unless you ask. So you have to keep cutting the end of the ham off? No.
So do you think that's what's missing then with all this parents writing off children, well, not so much parents writing off children, but children writing off their parents or drawing those really deep lines in the sand, is that perhaps if they took time, I mean, I'm not saying there aren't evil people out there, and there are, but I like to assume positive intent. But if they would take the time to maybe ask those questions, like you said, why did you do that? Why, this is what I remember. Can you tell me what was going on? Because my kids still have no idea what happened with my divorce, because I've chosen not to tell them. They're grown-ups now. I would tell them, but my story is my story. But I think if it begins to negatively affect other generations, and which therefore would affect the next and the next and the next, is that the part that's missing with all this discourse and ugliness between generations, is that they're just not talking to each other?
Yes, I do think that. And it's not necessarily asking specific questions, it's just having a conversation and eventually getting to it. And the fact that your son said what he said about your ambition is the perfect example of it.
Yeah.
And now he's changing his ways. He tends to, as you had said to me a couple of weeks ago, he doesn't like to be ambitious because he doesn't want to do that to his family.
Yeah.
But is ambition the real word, or something else, like your job and your ambitions were taking away the attention he needed?
Yeah.
That paints a different picture. And so will that affect his family in the future? Yeah, it will.
Yeah.
So the answer to that, like, will it affect generation over generation if you don't talk about it and explain and try and understand, what's under the blanket, the umbrella thing, then yeah, it will. But to have the conversation, nobody likes talking anymore. Everybody's texting. Nobody even likes talking on the phone anymore. Nobody even well, not no, I can't say nobody, but very few people that I know still have a home phone,
Mm,
and they don't want to talk on the phone. They just, some people would rather get a root canal than have to talk on the
yeah.
phone with somebody.
Yeah.
But talking face to face is much different, but how often do we do that? Family gatherings, holidays.
Yeah.
Um, my brother, we called my dad yesterday to sing him happy birthday, and my brother said that they decided that they were going to have a once a month dinner with dad, and all of my family lives on the other side of our state, and except for me. And so I'm going to be the one that has to drive. And I have very busy weekends, sometimes busier than my weekdays. And they
Hmm.
do it on Saturday night or a Friday night. And I said, can't we do lunch? You know, but you got to take into account other people's lives,
Yeah.
when it comes to, I don't know, I'm going on a tangent now. So,
No, no, no. But I also think it's that they don't want to dig deep because that stuff's hard, right? And
yeah, it hurts.
it's so much easier to be mad.
Hmm.
Mad, anger is the most functional emotion out there. I
Hmm.
get so much done. Like when I'm still in my angry mode, once you start getting past the fact that anger is typically hurt, kind of masked,
Hmm.
once you get past that, you lose your function because it is truly a devastating emotion. It can be. It's very soul crushing in some ways. Boy, that's
Agreed.
dramatic.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
it's so much easier, and so many people would rather draw that line, have an enemy that they can focus on so they don't have to focus on anything else. It's so much easier just to stay in that place as opposed to asking those questions. So
Correct.
yeah, it just makes me sad because I don't think anybody, once again, there are people that do deserve stuff like that, but you're denying part of yourself if you don't find out where you came from. Because you can say, where did you come from? And you can say, oh yeah, well, we're English and Irish. Yeah, I did my 23andMe or whatever. I did that, and that's where we're from. No, where are you from?
Hmm.
Where
Yeah,
what is your family story? What is
yeah.
your
What is
family
your family
story?
story? And your sibling
And
story, and the
yeah,
stories you heard from your parents,
yeah,
even about sledding, or we never had the money to fly anywhere. And one time I got to take a plane to California, something like that.
yeah,
Because that gives you depth. You need depth in order to understand the depths of anger that you're in now.
yeah. And
And
you can't get away from it
no,
because the
you
one
can
thing that
push
I
it away.
love, huh?
You can push it away.
Oh yeah, and you can deny all day long,
Mhm.
but unless yeah, I love the one little thing that's manifesting itself in our family is all of my siblings, and now I'm finding out that my children are in professions that were that are professions from our family. Like I
Mhm.
have a brother who's a doctor, all the way back to my great grandfather who was a physician. My other brother was a teacher or is a teacher. My mother and my grandmother were teachers. And I've been all over the place, so whatever. But even my son, when my father's 80th birthday, we had a surprise 80th birthday party here in town, and his brother came and who was 4 years older than him, and brought kind of the history of the family. He told stories of their childhood, and my grandfather was a machinist forever, Keystone Steel in Peoria, Illinois. Back in the days, I'd like have his 50-year pin or watch or something back when you used to stay at your company, once again, being the provider, stay at your company for 50 years and you retire from the same place that you start, and you don't quit because
Yeah,
you're having a bad day, and you don't quit because your boss makes you mad because you got a
right.
family at home to feed. But my son is a machinist. And
That's
it's like Max was still kind of messing around in high school and doing different things, but I was like, you need to get up here and you are not here by yourself. You are not here by yourself because you have generations of engineers and machinists behind you. This is you cannot denying this story is denying part of yourself.
yeah, yep, yeah.
And
No
it's a
matter what
shame.
you've done.
Yeah. But the whole sibling thing is really interesting because another thing that we found out through those stories and through kind of spending time when my dad was still alive, there were several occasions where him and his older brother were together, and they would tell stories, and the stories that they would tell in the same family were so different. Like
Oh,
the
yes.
older brother resented everything that he didn't get from his family, whereas my dad was very grateful for everything that he got. It was almost like, in fact, I remember my husband Jim actually saying to them when we were at a dinner, "Did you guys actually even grow up in the same household?"
Yeah.
is so interesting. The whole sibling part of it all as well. And just think how having one, but if you don't know what the reality was, they both go off running their own separate lives with these whole different memories of their childhood that affects that family and the family after. Do you have anything like that in your family with siblings that you think?
Oh, that's exactly. I wanted to laugh out loud when you said that, because you wouldn't believe how many times we've said that same thing. Did we all grow up in the same house? Because I'm the fourth of five kids, and there are stories and things about my parents or even about my siblings or themselves that people will talk about and I didn't know existed.
Oh,
Or I'm like, wait, when did that happen? They're like, oh yeah, blah 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 blah. And when this date and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't remember that. But then again, I have to remember that my three older sisters um, had a longer time in the house than my brother and I did, because
yeah.
we're the youngest, and my poor brother, he's the youngest. He's got four older sisters, and talk about, teasing and you're the baby and you got spoiled and stuff like that. It's got to be true. It's to the point where now he's sick of us saying that, and we're all old. But yeah, just the stories. And I think sometimes that I was clueless when I was a kid, because
Yeah.
I even have nieces that will say something about, like, the status of the home that I grew up in a negative manner, and I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Because my oldest sister, had kids that are actually closer to my age than like the cousins, the grandchildren are. So I have a niece that's only, I think, 11 years younger than me.
Mhm.
So we're pretty close in age, and we're pretty close. And um, it's just weird to see your nieces and nephews say, well, isn't this what was going on in your house when you were in junior high? Because that's
Yeah.
how old I was, or sixth grade, seventh grade. I'm like, no, like, at least I was older than you were. You were like two or three, but,
Yeah.
and then just believing what you're told too.
Yeah, that's true.
Believing, like, hey, this happened. So, this is what happened when you were five, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, really? And sometimes I think my siblings don't have the right story either, because they were told by a parent or our parents or a grandparent or even a great grandparent,
Hmm.
um, just, the stories that's like the telephone game.
Yeah.
It changes all the time.
Yeah.
Or you don't have enough information. Like, why do you cut the end of a ham off? Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows?
Maybe
But
maybe it's supposed to make more juice. I don't know.
nobody
But
knows.
just
No.
thinking of the whole thing as a whole, it sometimes it creates anxiety to think, how do I get this all together? And
Yeah.
why have I been thinking that phrase since I was 14?
Yeah.
And then again, I'm never going to get this together because it's not meant to be. So where are you between those two thoughts when
Yeah.
it comes to being a grandparent, or looking back at your adult kids and saying, okay, do you want me to apologize for something? And that's why you're not talking to me, but you're not telling me what I'm supposed to be apologizing for?
Yeah.
You know, just the whole disconnect, and the the thoughts about today, and claiming your parents are toxic. And we're not talking about real abuse. We're talking about just, oh, you made me do this, or you made me do that, or I didn't have a ride to soccer.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Stuff about not being seen.
Yeah.
And when, like I said before, when you do the best you can with the tools you have at the time,
Hmm.
your kids don't see that when they're 12.
Yeah.
And they think back, that's the only memory they have of being dissed by their parent or their mom. And yeah, it's tough. It's tough because
Yeah.
it's not the same story.
Yeah.
It's not the same story. Which,
I've
like
so
you said, which we started in the beginning, it goes back generations and
yeah.
generations. Not the same
Yeah.
story.
And then just think if there is no resolution for that parent-child combination, that's going to affect that parent. It's going to go back generations. It's going to go forward generations.
Right.
I
It's gonna
honestly
go both
feel,
generations. Yeah.
I feel terrible, for the parents that are being kind of accused of things that maybe didn't even cross their mind. Like you said, they were doing the best they could if there isn't anything truly, truly horrible that happened. And I just hope that, I mean, what can you do except, yeah, like you said, am I supposed to apologize? Do you want an apology from me? Because if you think I'll give you one because I love you and if it will help you, but I have no idea what you're talking about. And I don't know, it's like, that's just an exercise in fakeness and it's not going to be genuine. So you're not going to get genuine healing. I think we all just have to take responsibility for, for everything that we did and hope that we didn't cause too much damage and that we can continue the conversation, which is what it's all about, I guess.
And I think that's also where the questions come in too. Because if you're demanding as an adult child, you're demanding accountability and apologies, then you need to ask questions and maybe those demands will change or even go away. Who knows? But not knowing what you're demanding and asking for apologies for is a huge thing.
Yeah.
And just following what, a therapist may have said about, well, you need to hold your parents accountable. Please tell me what you're holding me accountable for. I would like to know, because
I wonder if that'll...
and at one time or another, every kid will say my childhood sucked. Like when I was 11 or when I was 15 or I quit school or sometime, even if you feel you had a great childhood, there are times when everybody's childhood sucked. Yeah. I remember that. I remember a childhood sucking at a certain time. It wasn't all, roses.
No, I wonder if that'll be the next big trend in counseling will be parent-child or whatever, where it's more of a family thing, because that seems to be the only fair thing to do. I know, and I think that that's a lot of the counseling. It's like you said, being seen. Somebody needs to see what happened. Okay, but it doesn't, I hate to use the word, but that doesn't have to be weaponized against a person, because forgiveness is for you, right? Forgiveness is for the person. That's what you want to strive for. So then you can move on. You're never going to get what you need, because what you needed from that parent or what you believe you needed was in that moment. Can't go back to being that 6-year-old where they gave your brother a better bike than you or whatever it was. That's, I'm trivializing it, but that honestly could be the extent of it. And asking for that kind of I'm sorry at 25 isn't going to fix that 6-year-old child.
No, so that's a really good point. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. It's a really good point. And so is that apology actually going to heal that relationship or that issue? It may or may not.
Yeah.
But it depends on what happened and when it happened, how old they were. But even like you said, even those minor things, like you bought me a phone, but you didn't buy, or you bought my brother a phone, you didn't buy me a phone, and I'm older or something like that, that blows up in their head and becomes a constant in their memory for the rest of their teenage years or something, because they felt dissed or disrespected or something like that. Yeah.
And they probably
see 6-year-old.
Yeah. See everything that happens from then on as being an attack or a less than. So you're never going to be able to recover from that.
Right.
Yeah.
And looking back that far, yes, it's just clouded with anger.
Yeah.
The current memory is clouded with anger and adding things that actually didn't happen.
Yeah. Or didn't, yeah.
Exaggerating things like you said, like the bike or something like that.
I'm all about honoring people's memories. I don't want to tell them what happened, didn't happen, but it's just, you can't, yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Just, it changes. Everything changes.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. Somebody told us one time, change is good, time is our friend. I'm like, okay, yeah, but sometimes time can change things in a bad way.
Exactly.
If you felt like you needed to apologize to your brother for not showing up to, something important to his wedding 20 years ago, maybe you should have apologized. But
I guess the only thing that I wish for other people as well is ask the questions while the people are still alive, right? Because it's like, don't spend 20 years being angry. Like if I could go back and see my grandmother and talk to my parents again, there'd be a lot of different things that I would talk to them about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody gets hooked up in the day-to-days, everybody gets hooked up in, whatever. I don't have time, I got to do this, I got to do this. And then before you know it, I mean, it's true of anybody, but especially when you're dealing with family history, and if there's something that you feel could have benefited from a conversation so that you can move forward in a peaceful way, do it now. Do it now.
Definitely do it now. You don't need that righteousness because it's not going to do you any good when they're gone.
Yeah.
It'll be gone by then anyway. So.
Yeah. No.
But this is our first conversation after lots of conversations in the last 20 years.
Yeah. So much more to come. We appreciate you if you're watching this. If not, we had a great conversation. So I feel better. I don't know about you, Judy.
I do, because everybody needs to know that they're not alone in all of this. If you want to go watch a podcast about cute little dresses for your granddaughter, Dana's got a really cute little granddaughter, by the way. I don't have any granddaughters. Mine's all grandsons.
Yeah, well, we'll balance out somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere. But
somewhere. Well, like you said, nobody's alone in this journey. We're doing this so that we can share our stories and then hopefully resonate something with you and yours. So join us again. We'll have another conversation soon.
Okay, take care.
See ya.